It's finally happening.
Brace yourselves, everyone!
With the release of Life is But a Dream, we're going to rank the albums of Avenged Sevenfold, and we're starting from the beginning with Sounding the Seventh Trumpet in 2001. Pretty weak album overall, but to be fair, save for a handful of standouts from the likes of Poison the Well, Unearth, and Killswitch Engage, I feel like most metalcore debut albums from this era were pretty rough. There are some elements of their sound here, but the performances haven't found their footing yet, and the vocals are especially rough and frequently just plain off key. Notably, M. Shadow's future wife, Valerie De Benedetto, sings on The Art of Subconscious Illusion. The riffing, which has always been my main draw to this band, is also just not as strong with this particular lineup, but I will say that the drumming's already pretty killer right out of the gate from The Rev, which is even more impressive knowing that they were all apparently recorded in one take. Not much else to say about this one, it's going to D tier. But they followed that up with Waking the Fallen in 2003. Now, this was my first Avenged Sevenfold album, and the only one I actually ever owned a hard copy of. Unholy Confessions sold me on buying it, which I still think is a fun single. Big step up in quality all around. The production sounds better. Sinister Gates taking over on guitar and really bringing the hooks alongside Zacky Vengeance. Chapter 4 is also solid with the great harmonized riffs and church bells. Desecrate Through Reverence has really fun interplay between the drums and guitar. Eternal Rest shredding it up over D-beats and bringing in some organ. Just endless riffage I jammed plenty back in my college days. I will say though, even back in the day, I felt like the only drawbacks I saw on this album were that the songs, and really the album as a whole, are longer than they needed to be. Yes, it's becoming a meme on this channel at this point. Again, I want to be exceedingly clear, I love long songs that actually utilize the full runtime. I love Opeth, I enjoy Tool, I enjoy some Dream Theater, I enjoy me a good 20-minute long song if they can actually do something engaging with every second of it.
It's not the size that counts, it's how you use it!
But on here, I just don't think that's the case. Like, in particular, after Radiant Eclipse, it just seems to drag on and on kind of forever. And the other thing is that I still had mixed feelings about M. Shadow's clean vocals. Like, they can come off as a little whiny, but at least here he's hitting most of the notes, though he still sounds pretty strained at times. Overall, I'm going to kind of split the difference and put this one at B tier. Next up is City of Evil in 2005. Now, when I was planning out the video I did on my favorite long metal albums, I actually had a lot of requests to include this one. But again, I find this album to be kind of overrated.
He did not just... Did you just say that?
Bear with me though, as I still have good things to say about it too. For one, their signing to Warner Brothers Records definitely shines through in the production, and the increased influence of heavy metal makes for even greater hooks. M. Shadow's vocal coaching with Ron Anderson, who has also worked with Axl Rose and Chris Cornell, also shows in his performance. Some fantastic songs on here. The Beast in the Heartlet is another top 5 track for them, with a great guitar hook that always gets stuck in my head. Great way to open up the album. The chorus is a little corny, but whatever. Trashed and Scattered is a total banger with both great guitar work and some really fun vocal moments like those very Axl Rose sounding The real problem for me is that despite the obvious improvements, I still find Shadow's more nasally moments really off-putting on Burn It Down and Strength of the World. And once again, I really don't think that this thing justifies the nearly 73-minute runtime. It would be a much tighter album at 40 to 45 minutes in my opinion. And I'm really not a fan of some of these songs like Seize the Day, Betrayed, or Sidewinder, even if I do like the Spanish guitar on the latter. The Wicked End has those cool symphonic elements, but not much else, and same with Strength of the World again with the slide guitar and strings. Cool ideas, but often just poor execution. Still, I may be opinionated, but I'm not stupid. I realize that I'm in the minority on this one. It's certified platinum and made number 30 on Billboard, and undoubtedly a marked step up from the last one in terms of songwriting and production, but again, I just think it's even more bloated and inconsistent. So I'm also putting this one at B tier.
It's your funeral.
Then we had Avenged Sevenfold in 2007. Almost Easy is another top 5 track for me, super infectious with fantastic riffs and all of their best qualities on display. Great Guitar Hero 3 track. Critical Acclaim also makes for a really strong opener, even if that spoken word section is pretty corny. And speaking of vocals, I think that M. Shadows finally really spreads his wings on this album with a broader range of styles and a much better control and mastery of his performance. This may very well be his best. Scream is pretty damn catchy. Afterlife is a real head bobber that always puts a smile on my face. Unbound has a very Bad Religion energy to it. Brompton Cocktail has some killer symphonic elements. A Little Piece of Heaven goes for kind of a 1920s swing club vibe. A few nitpicks: I'm not a big fan of Gunslinger. I hate the auto-tune elements on Lost, and Dear God is pretty corny with its country music vibes. But honestly, even the lesser tracks on here are generally saved by other elements that make them memorable. Just so creative and diverse, and I really appreciate the more concise runtime. Another certified platinum album, and it hit number 4 on Billboard. Critical reception was apparently more mixed with this one, but if you ask me, this is way better than City of Evil.
Stop saying that.
I'm putting this one all the way up at S tier. They followed it up with Nightmare in 2010.
It's your fucking nightmare.
Sadly, during the recording of this album, the Rev passed away, so as I detailed in my Lost Media video, they ended up reworking the concept with Mike Portnoy stepping in on drums. Another strong starter with Nightmare launching another killer live anthem, followed up by the equally fun and riff-heavy Welcome to the Family and Danger Line. But after that, this one kind of hits a wall for me. I'm not a big fan of Buried Alive or Natural Born Killer, even if they're not bad songs. And then there are a lot of slower tracks here like So Far Away, Victim, and Tonight the World Dies that just do very little for me personally, though I can appreciate the tributes to their fallen friend. On the flip side, God Hates Us has good energy and even some harsh vocals. Save Me makes for a good closer, and I love the piano on Fiction, which is actually arranged by Mark Elizondo, who has worked with everyone from Dr. Dre and Mastodon to Fiona Apple and Lin-Manuel Miranda. As a whole, though, this one feels like a step backwards to me creatively, and pretty inconsistent as a whole. Though considering the circumstances, they may have just done the best that they could with an awful situation. Still platinum and number 1 on Billboard, but for me, this one is going to C tier. And then we got Hail to the King in 2013. Right from the top, Shepherd of Fire feels like a comparatively much weaker opener than in the past. It just lacks that kick in the door quality. I do like the drumming though. I was hoping the title track would be better, but instead it just feels like I'm listening to a cover of some 80s metal power ballad or like Bon Jovi. And honestly, that's kind of the vibe I get from this entire album. It's a lot of flat, mid-tempo dad rock energy.
So lame.
Doing Time feels like Billy Idol without the fun. This Means War is discount sad but true. Crimson Day is Every Rose Has Its Thorn light. Then we get the random Latin chanting on Requiem, which could be cool, but it just feels so out of place. Put simply,
Cringe.
But fanboy's gonna fanboy, as this was another number 1 record for them, so good for them I guess, but I'm putting this one at D tier. But then they pulled another 180 with The Stage in 2016. This is the first Avenged Sevenfold album to feature drummer Brooks Wackerman, and their first concept album based on artificial intelligence and self-destruction, which is pretty timely, I might say. Kind of a Mr. Crowley synth intro going into that great tapping riff and the crazy deluge of toms. Now this is how you open an album. Unfortunately, I can really hear the vocal strain on this one, which definitely takes some of the impact down for me, but damn, the guitar work is really good. And really in general, the more progressive approach to this album makes these runtimes feel actually earned. Like, anyone who's down in the comments like, oh, he doesn't like long albums, he doesn't like long songs, like, I enjoy these. These are good. This is a good example of what to do with a long runtime. Not to mention, everything just feels like a massive arena performance, especially after the limp noodle sound of that last album. This is almost like Avenged Sevenfold goes Dream Theater. Love the brass on Sunny Disposition. Angels and Simulation have kind of a Soundgarden vibe. Great snare on the latter too. Higher is the definition of epic and packed with solos. And then there's their longest song to date in the nearly 16-minute Exist, complete with Neil deGrasse Tyson making a spoken word appearance that he specifically wrote for the song. Maybe not as catchy or single-worthy as some of their other stuff, but at the time this was easily their most ambitious and mature outing, I would say. So I'm gonna put this one at A tier. But sometimes ambition can be a fickle mistress. And that brings us to Life is But a Dream in 2023.
Right in the shadows, wandering beyond the frame.
So after a very long hiatus, our first taste of new Avenged Sevenfold was the extremely hyped Nobody. I was there for the premiere, and the reaction, even from the fans, was mostly... Now, I gave the band props for doing something different, but man, if this wasn't an odd choice for a lead single. Aside from the repetitive main hook, the vocals, both in performance and production, struck me as some of the worst of their entire career. Amplify the strain I mentioned from The Stage by like 10. But I have to say, after listening to the full album several times, this almost feels like a troll now. They followed that up with We Love You, with its chaotic shifts in style and heavier emphasis on riffage. The spoken word mantra also gets kind of hypnotic after a while. I saw many compare this one to Mr. Bungle, and make no mistake, Mike Patton is a clear influence all over this album. Mattel is full of Faith No More energy, mixing piano, lounge singing vibes with the more overtly metal guitars. Easier is another kind of later Faith No More sounding track, but with some stylistic touches of auto-tune. G also has some deeper spoken word moments that feel straight out of Angel Dust's RV, but complemented by a composition that feels like Dave Matthews Band mixing in backup singers and organ. Which brings us to the much broader scope of this album as a whole. Opening track Game Over has some pretty strong Bad Religion sounding elements, but then there's the more retro sounding stuff, like the very Queen style shredding of Cosmic, that comparison feeling even more apt given the later infusions of piano, brass, and stringed instruments. Very A Night at the Opera. This followed by the equally symphonic Beautiful Morning, which has more of a Sgt. Pepper era Beatles psychedelic vibe, but with the occasional interruptions of Alice in Chains' Them Bones.
Strange, but sweet.
Ordinary brings more auto-tune alongside some funky disco guitars, while Death feels more like a Frank Sinatra at Carnegie Hall production, transitioning nicely into the somber solo piano performance of the closing title track. Again, after the singles, I was prepared for this to be one of the biggest shit shows of the year, but they made me a believer. It's still a bit messy, I don't love the production, and M. Shadows definitely has those moments where he goes for the high notes and makes me wince, but for the most part, he plays to his strengths here, and in a pretty different way. And frankly, this is far more interesting to me than most of their discography.
There he go, hating again!
So if you prefer City of Evil and hated The Stage, you should avoid this like the plague. But if you're like me and enjoy their more eclectic and progressive side, there's a lot to take in here. Personally though, and I can scarcely believe it myself, I'm putting it at A right next to The Stage. Y'all check out this playlist for more metalcore rankings and videos, and let me know your thoughts of the albums down below. You can also support me on Patreon, which will be in the pinned comment, and my merch store, which is right below every video. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.